I found it to be beneficial, and as we say often, that when you worship God, He doesn't just sit there and take it. He starts giving you things. He starts paying attention to your life, and He starts rewarding you for that worship and reaching out to you. And God has a plan for your life. He has a purpose for you, and He wants to build up your life. So we're thankful for the good God that we serve tonight. We'd like to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And I'd like to talk to you about the benefits of being a servant. And the title for the message tonight is Make Yourself All Things to All People. That's what Paul said he did. Make yourself all things to all people. And tonight there's benefits to being a servant. And when you are a servant in this world, serving God or serving others, you find your calling and you find your purpose. You find your spiritual gifts. You find lots of things. Serving others opens the door for God to use you and God to fulfill His purpose in your life. And so we want to read these few verses, work through the verses tonight. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19. Paul said, "For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more." And this is a paradox maybe in some people's minds. You think of how much we value our freedom. Here in the United States, we love our freedom. We thank God for our freedom and appreciate all the freedoms that we have. But yet, in some ways, being a servant is higher ground, right? Being a servant is higher ground. Paul said, "I'm free from everybody, but I make myself a servant to everyone." And he found himself free, but then he decided to be a servant. And again, tonight we value our freedoms. You value vacation time, holidays, and retirement. People count down years till retirement, right? So I don't have to get up every Monday and go to work kind of thing, right? We value our freedoms. Just being off the clock is a relief, right? But Paul said he was free, but then he made himself a servant. He decided to switch roles, right? He decided to switch roles, and it was to serve everybody. Instead of serving himself and just living for his freedom, he wanted to serve everyone. And we've all done this to a degree. Everyone that's an adult, everyone that's been a teenager and then decided to get married and have kids. When you graduate high school, what do you think? I am free, right? I'm a free person. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to chase my dreams and do my thing. And then you get married and have a kid and you find out you're a servant to that little baby. Yeah. You're a servant, but you love it, right? You love that child and you love being there. And servanthood unlocks a lot of good things in your life, and it unlocks a lot of God's blessings in life. And when you're a servant tonight, it opens doors for God to move in your life. And it's God's nature tonight to make something out of nothing. And I got this thought from Martin Luther. I just read a quote from him, and he was talking to this, but I'll modify it just a little bit to make it conversational. He talked about how God makes something out of nothing. As long as we're built up as something in ourselves, God doesn't do a whole lot with us. Right. But when we become nothing, that's when God starts doing something in our life. When we humble ourselves to be a servant, to be a nobody, that's when God starts doing good things in our life. And Paul said he made himself a servant so he could gain the more. And we want to talk about that tonight. We'll get there eventually, but he wanted to gain something. He was looking to reach out for something, right? He wanted to gain something by making himself a servant. And what he was reaching for, he could not get by just being free to be himself, right? He was free, but he made himself a servant because he wanted something he couldn't get just being a free man. Amen. So I say tonight, free people and rich people have something to gain by being a servant tonight. We all have something to gain by being a servant. St. Augustine said in his book, City of God, that I'm still trying to work through. I've been reading it for a long time. But he said, servitude to God is beneficial to everyone. Everyone benefits from serving God. Doesn't matter who you are tonight. If you will yield to God, you'll find your life better than what you did on your own. Right? Serving God is beneficial to everyone. Like we said tonight, if you'll turn to serve God, serve the church, serve your family, serve others, you'll find your calling in life. And you'll find your purpose. And you'll find Jeremiah's writings coming true where God said, I have good things in store for you. I have good plans for you. But it's not something you can get as long as you're serving yourself. You can't find that joy by just serving yourself in life. You can't get there. I can remember Brother Decker. I appreciate Brother Decker. He's been a help to me in my ministry and my young Christian life. I got saved in his congregation at that camp meeting there. And he's told it a lot of times that when God was calling him to the ministry, I'm not sure if God told him this direct, if Brother Wilson counseled him, but he said God led him to go visit nursing homes. And he learned to pray with people. Learned to sit and talk to people that couldn't do anything. And to try to bring the Spirit of God into those rooms in the nursing homes. And that's how he got started in his ministry. And it was by serving. And this story repeats itself over and over and over. It repeats itself in the Scriptures. David served as a shepherd out in the field all by himself, didn't he? And God called him to slay that giant and to lead the children of Israel. But it started serving the family, right? Brother Decker said he started in the nursing homes. And when no one's looking, no one's watching, no one's applauding you, no one wants your job, right? There's a lot of good things in life that starts when no one wants to be you. No one wants what you're doing. But it's in those hours that God teaches you. And God starts to use you. I listened to someone testify the other day online. It was a video I was watching, and they testified how for the first 15 to 20 years of their ministry, the only doors God opened was for them to sit in people's living rooms and share the gospel. But then God started opening all kinds of other doors, right? God opens doors. So offer to do light maintenance at the church. Offer to cook or clean church dinners. And pretty soon you'll be famous. No, I'm just kidding. Amen. I was sharing some of this thoughts with Jason last night. We sit around the living room and share things. And I was telling him he was going to preach about being free but wanting to be a servant instead. And remember the prodigal son? He was as free as he could be, spending all that money, and then he got in trouble. But he was a free person, but he decided his father's servants were better off than he was. Remember that story? He decided, my father's servants are doing better than I am. They're serving my father, but they're in better shape than I am. And serving God is that way tonight. Being a servant of God is better than being the devil's ringleader. Being a servant of Jesus Christ is better than being at the top of the devil's chart, so to speak. The prodigal spoke it that way. Let's read on here, try to get to some other things. Paul said, "And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without law," talking about Gentiles, being without the Jewish law, "as without law, being not without law to God, but under law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without the law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some." So Paul said he was made all things to all men. That's our title tonight. Make yourself all things to all people. And in our language, when Paul said, "I make myself a Jew," that meant when he was around the Jew, he had to eat like they ate. So no bacon. When you go to McDonald's with a Jew, get the egg and cheese, not the bacon, egg, and cheese. For the love of souls. Probably be healthier anyway. But Paul said, "I became all things to all men." So what are you willing to do to win somebody? Things that you don't normally do, right? I like all kinds of food. Food is one of my weaknesses. If I get a tax refund, it gets spent on food a lot of times. Finding a place to eat, and when we plan vacations, food's a big thing. Find a good place to eat, and I like pretty much any food from anywhere in the world except Indian food. You can have all the curry. Don't save me any. I won't be offended. But if I had the chance to win Indian people and they wanted me to eat their food with them, I would eat the Indian food. I just hope there's a bowl of sugar so I can put some sugar in the curry and get it down. It's better to eat food you don't like and have a chance to win a soul than to eat all your favorite food by yourself and be barren spiritually. I'll even go farther than that, being all things to all men. For the sake of fellowship, I'll go to any restaurant you want. If I don't like the restaurant you pick, I'll go anyway. For the sake of fellowship. Amen. There's no big punchline on that. That was just the statement itself. I think it's worth it to go to a restaurant you don't like to be around the people of God. And Paul said, verse 22, "To the weak I became as weak, that I may gain the weak. I am made all things to all men." And sometimes that statement, "to the weak I became as weak," was about food. Some of the weak people wouldn't eat certain meats, and he had to avoid eating certain meats around them. But he did it for the love of God. Right? I'll do whatever it takes to gain a soul. True friends are better than free time, better than money. You know what happens? You rescue the perishing and then they turn around and minister to you in the church because God blesses them and God uses them to bless your heart. Remember when you weren't saved? Remember when, before you got saved, you would visit a church, people were praying for you, They were praying during altar calls for you. Remember that? I remember those days. People were praying for me. They were serving for my benefit. Brother Borders mentioned this at Pennsylvania. He came over to the revival when I was preaching over there. He was the first preacher I heard when we visited that church in West Virginia where my family got saved. And he said back in whatever year that was, 1987, he'd have never dreamed that years later he'd be driving to Pennsylvania to hear one of those little kids preach. I was a little kid that he came and preached to. But people traveled, prayed, sacrificed, did everything for us to be saved. And then we turned around and ministered to them. Amen. And Paul brought this out. He said, verse 23, "And this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be a partaker with you." Amen. And there's the great benefit. I know the world doesn't look at this as a great benefit, but there's spiritual benefits. When you win souls and heaven comes down and God gives the new converts spiritual gifts to minister to your heart, to help you make it to heaven, to have heaven to go to heaven in. Right? Amen. Make yourself all things to all people. Why? Because we're headed for heaven. That's what we're looking for. We want to go together. Want to see people meet their reward. Right? Servitude to God has a reward, an eternal reward in heaven tonight. And I'm getting ready to close. I know it's a short message and I'm not apologizing in closing tonight. Are you in servitude to God? Are you finding benefits in being a servant? I think we are tonight. And the truth is tonight, you might say, I don't want to be a servant to God. Well, you're going to serve either God or the devil. There's no in between. You might think, well, I'm not serving the devil. But if you're not serving Christ, the devil is your father. And he wants you to serve yourself. Jesus being God in the flesh. Brother Tony wrote a good book about that. It's a good subject. Jesus is God in the flesh, right? Jesus, when He came, He could have did whatever He wanted. He was God. But you know what He chose to be? He chose to be a servant. I think that says a lot about servanthood. When God has His perfect choice, He's God, He's omnipotent, He's in control of everything, and He sets everything up for His plan, and He chose to be a servant. I think that says a lot for being a servant. He found that to be the best. Serving others, praying for others, visiting. Jesus said, one thing that separates the sheep from the goats is if you visit people that are down, nursing homes, prisons. He didn't say those words, but that's what He's talking about. Hospitals. Not all day, every day, but once in a while, go visit someone. It's good for us. Amen. Jesus chose to be a servant. Are you a servant tonight? Are you all things to all people? Can you stomach food you don't like for the sake of fellowship? Amen. We're going to ask you to stand and us musicians to come. Lord bless you tonight. If you have a need, these front pews are open. You can pray. If you want to pray about being a disciple,